and distributed ledger technologies are a set of innovations extending from the development of Bitcoin. It was the invention of Bitcoin that made them possible. Although many of these technologies work similarly to Bitcoin, they sometimes differ significantly and sometimes slightly in essential respects. In this video, I will share examples of some of these differences and outline the main categories of cryptocurrencies. I also highlight how these technologies could develop and impact our lives. My name is Victoria Collette Jones, and I own satoshishpage.com. I am the author and publisher of the book Truth Decay: How Bitcoin Fixes This. Many articles and videos are available on my website, and I encourage you to sign up for my newsletter and subscribe to my social media channels. I outline how Bitcoin works and demonstrate the technology in my previous video, A Simple Guide to Bitcoin. Many acknowledge that due to the design of Bitcoin, it is the most secure and reliable cryptocurrency. As such, it has the most robust reputation. However, many need clarification on the differences between the other cryptocurrencies, or as we call them, cryptos. All the cryptos use some form of blockchain technology to produce an immutable ledger with data that others cannot change. This data is also secured by sharing the information with a network of nodes. As such, they are also known as distributed ledger technologies. Some cryptocurrency coins like Bitcoin Cash and Litecoin are copies of the original Bitcoin codebase. However, many others have a codebase with an original design but still work similarly. While Bitcoin is designed as a new form of digital gold, other cryptos are designed to have a different function. This is often where the confusion between cryptos and currencies usually comes in. The best example of this is Ethereum. Unlike Bitcoin, which just keeps a transaction record, Ethereum is designed to execute smart contracts. This means that the ledger doesn't just record the payment, but can execute an action in response. A direct debit from your bank account works like this. You arrange to pay a fee and are provided with a service. Supply chains can use this technology to automate the transition of goods through their systems. Although smart contracts don't contain legal language, they are essentially agreements processed automatically according to a set of rules. So for those struggling to conceptualize the differences between Bitcoin and the other cryptos, I explain it as akin to Bitcoin as digital money and Ethereum as digital law. When using the analogy in a business context, I describe Bitcoin as similar to a digital accountant and Ethereum as akin to a digital lawyer, so that people can visualize and relate to what is happening here. Ethereum before 2022 shared many of the features of Bitcoin, such as requiring miners and nodes, having a community, needing software developers, and being used by exchanges and businesses. However, Ethereum's codebase is much more complicated than Bitcoin's, given its more complex tasks. This means that the data held in its blockchain is also much larger. Running a node for Ethereum is very data intensive and will likely become more prohibitive regarding energy and hardware requirements over time. As a single individual also leads the protocol, Vitalik Buterin, unlike Bitcoin where the anonymous founder left the open source software community in 2011, Ethereum is prone to popular pressure and therefore changes instigated by its leadership. With the controversy around the energy required for Bitcoin mining in the early 2020s, the Ethereum developers were strongly encouraged to look for more energy efficient solutions. The idea they came up with was to avoid mining and instead use validators. Validators are nodes that have to stake 32 ETH instead of using energy to find the solution to a neutral algorithmic puzzle to validate a block of transactions. The validator instead releases a block of transactions that they approve of, and then a committee of other validators determines the proposed block's validity. The changes to this system, despite the seeming advantages, is that as the price of Ethereum increases, it becomes more and more difficult for someone to become a validator. Such a position now requires a certain level of wealth. However, owning a single miner and engaging in the competition to complete the puzzle and validate a block is still possible with Bitcoin. Running a node is also possible as the hardware required for this still only costs under $500, allowing a much more diverse community to influence how the technology works and develops. In reality, it is much more expensive now to run an Ethereum node than a Bitcoin node. As nodes are responsible for electing software changes to the codebase, and as the ability to run an Ethereum node becomes harder, software changes will be managed by a smaller, more elite group of developers. Over time, these developers will have a greater ability to change the codebase of Ethereum unilaterally. So as the validator's power increases, the influence of the community decreases. As the code becomes more extensive and complex, the chances of it breaking become possible, which is a risk for the exchanges and businesses that rely on it. Bitcoin's strength is that it prioritizes security through its relative simplicity and has striven to maintain its decentralizing features as the lowest common denominator when it comes to running a node. Despite the shortcomings, Ethereum has captured the imagination of many organizations and individuals worldwide. The UK government has expressed a strong interest in the technology and is already researching its use in many government departments. These include healthcare, work and pensions, intellectual property rights, tax and internal revenue monitoring, national identity management systems, justice and tribunal services, post-Brexit border control of trade, land registration of property, grants and student loans, public procurement, voting and democracy, secure banking services, education and skills, and sport. As the idea behind the Ethereum technology has gained traction over the last few years, we have seen several hype phases in terms of investment as the interest in a particular application takes off and then often dies away. In 2017, we had initial coin offerings, or as we called them, ICOs. The idea here was that a company would create its own token, similar to a stock market stock, and by selling these it was a new way to provide capital to new businesses, enabling them to take off with starter funding. The intention was that the token's value would increase as the company became more successful. Unfortunately, with many of these businesses, great interest and investment went into them at the beginning of the project. Still, over time, as challenges needed to be addressed and the company failed to take off, the token's value plummeted, as can be seen in this example here of a payment processor called 10x, whose progress was hindered by their ability to collaborate with Visa in 2018. Many invested in these ICO tokens based on their company's great ideas. Still, the lack of power of some of these companies to follow through left them failing and their investors very disappointed. As such, the concept behind ICOs quickly faded as investors were left licking their wounds and wondering what on earth happened. More recently, in 2020, much of the hype was around decentralized finance. The idea here is that exchanges and businesses can use smart contracts to manage finances and trading with no third-party involvement other than the smart contract. With the world's financial system running on a fiat currency essentially since 1971, much of our financial world has become increasingly complex, and much of our modern economic system relies on paper contracts. The idea behind DeFi is that smart contracts could automate this. Many of these are still in development, however. Although Bitcoiners designed Bitcoin as a form of digital gold, DeFi, with its interest-bearing smart contracts, appears to want to replicate the existing financial system with all of the dysfunction and corruption that goes with it. It remains to be seen whether or not this will become a successful, fully-fledged system in the future. In 2021, the big talking point was non-fungible tokens. The idea behind NFTs is that you can attach a unique code to an image or a real-world object to validate its authenticity, and it is then impossible to change this as the blockchain has verified it. Special collections have always been a point of interest, so it is hardly surprising that this new idea took off. However, there are reports that criminals use many of these projects for money laundering and tax avoidance. Nevertheless, the hype around NFTs has now died down significantly, and currently they need to attract the values they once had. In 2022, the metaverse was the next big discussion point, and the idea behind this was to give some real-world value to some of the tokens often used within digital games. Many of these games are still being developed and launched, and it'll be interesting to see how they perform long-term. This idea is intriguing because many people enjoy playing computer games. It is worth remembering, however, they are also an opportunity for those designing the game wanting to observe the data created by the players. It is advantageous to them to analyse how human beings are likely to react within those dynamics, which provides interesting psychological data for some data collection companies. In 2023, the current debate is around central bank digital currencies, or as they are otherwise known, CBDCs. The discussions around this are creating a great deal of concern, and rightly so, given that the development of Bitcoin and Ethereum is still in its infancy. It is unlikely that governments will be able to rely on something like CBDCs in the immediate future. However, it is worth considering how governments could implement these digital currencies. Bitcoin has been designed to mimic the properties of gold and has a relatively simple operating structure. The difference with Ethereum is that the smart contracts for individual applications are not programmed by Ethereum directly, but by the token built on top of Ethereum, such as ERC20 tokens. As such, these tokens have their own defining parameters. Automatic penalties could easily be programmed into different software protocols. It is within the realms of possibility that governments could create a digital currency wallet, so the owner must spend their government-issued money within a specific time. It could also be monitored remotely and used as part of a penal system. In China, they already have a social credit score used to monitor and influence society. Quite rightly, many people are concerned about the use of technology in this way. Just last year, Rishi Sunak, now the UK's Prime Minister, but was Chancellor at the time, produced this video describing coordinated plans for central bank digital currencies. I will let you listen to what he has to say here.
Proud to say that under the UK's presidency, the group of the world's 7 most advanced economies, the G7, is launching a set of public policy principles for retail central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Central bank digital currencies could be a digital version of money, a bit like a digital banknote that could be used alongside physical notes and coins. Unlike most of the digital money people use daily today, it would be issued directly by a central bank, like the Bank of England in the UK.
This video clearly demonstrates that this is more than just a vision for the UK. It is a plan developed in cooperation with many other countries worldwide, and it is worth being aware of that. Many people desire a sense of security and try to figure out what will happen in the future. Some tools are available to try and predict this. One of these tools is game theory. The idea behind game theory is somewhat obscure. In 2019, I gave a talk in Romania referencing my thoughts on this subject, and I share what I have to say here.
Now, game theory is the strategic interaction among rational decision makers, and there are serious intellectuals who spend a lot of time and resources building these mathematical models. Now, my first introduction to game theory was when I watched the film A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe, and I have to say my most abiding memory of that film is watching Russell do a number of very complicated calculations and then fall into a downward spiral of ever-increasing mental distress. So the subliminal message I got from that, whether or not it was intentional, is that looking into game theory is likely to fry your mind, and you probably don't want to go there. So I was aware of the concept, but I'd never really looked at it. But when I started investigating the blockchain space, I was inclined to take a closer look. Now, one of the most basic games that they analyze in game theory is called the prisoner's dilemma. So this might be where 2 criminals are accused of something, and the authorities make a deal with them. Should they confess or should they not confess? And so the prisoners are separated from each other and they need to make a decision. Because if they both confess, they both go to prison for 2 years. If one of them betrays the other, that person will go to prison for 3 years, but the one who betrays him doesn't go anywhere. But if they both stay silent, they only get a single year. So that's an example of a really basic game. But it gets much more complicated than this, and if, like me, you find that a little bit tiring to go through just by reading it, I can recommend a TV series called The Liar Game, which was produced in Japan, which dramatizes a number of these games, and I found it very interesting. In fact, the conclusion I came to after watching it is that game theory is possibly not so much a predictive tool, but possibly a manipulative one. Now, game theory has multiple applications. It can be used in human and animal behavior, economic behavior, political science, biology, computer science and logic, philosophy, and also interactive epistemology, what it means for the collective to have common beliefs and knowledge. So this is very interesting. You know, you realize that actually people can use game theory on a much larger scale. So that led to me thinking, obviously there's been a lot of discussion during this conference about personal privacy, and that's absolutely right. You know, if people have access to knowledge that's personal to you, it gives them the ability to manipulate you. But anyone who has any kind of scientific background realizes that if you want to build a model on something, what do you need in order to build that model? And that's data. And not only that, you don't need the data from every single individual. You just need a sample of that data, and you can actually extrapolate quite interesting predictions just from a sample of the data. You don't need all of it. So what I would encourage this community to maybe think about is not so much their own personal data, but the data that we may actually be providing collectively, because maybe the motivation is not to capture you as an individual, but perhaps to manipulate groups of people into the future.
There is much discussion around the collection of our data these days, and many rightly worry about their personal privacy. Still, as I explain in this talk, it isn't just personal privacy that we need to consider. The data we provide as a collective gives essential information to those with access to these mathematical models, who can manipulate many things based on this data. Almost everything we do these days and almost everything we touch involves some kind of data collection. I have demonstrated a website here. You can see me scrolling through this list of companies interested in our activity. The number of companies is almost in the thousands on just one website. Has it occurred to you to consider why they want all of this data? Many people discuss this but aren't necessarily coming to the correct conclusions. In 2018, the Cambridge Analytica scandal broke when the media discovered that a business that claimed to be using the data for research purposes sold it to a company called Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica then used this data to influence the US election in 2016. The reality is that no matter what laws have been created, once this data has been collected, saved and archived, it is available to be analysed at any point in the future should that be required. If one company can use it to influence a general election in the US, one can only imagine how anyone else with enough resources could use it. In 2018, a speaker known as Yuval Noah Harari gave a speech to the World Economic Forum explaining his vision for the future use of our data, and I will leave you to listen to what he has to say here.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens, because in the coming generations, we will learn how to engineer bodies and brains and minds. Now, how exactly will the future masters of the planet look like? This will be decided by the people who own the data. Now, why is data so important? It's important because we've reached the point when we can hack not just computers, we can hack human beings and other organisms. Now, what do you need in order to hack a human being? You need two things. You need a lot of computing power, and you need a lot of data, especially biometric data. But control of data might enable human elites to do something even more radical than just build digital dictatorships. By hacking organisms, elites may gain the power to re-engineer the future of life itself. Because once you can hack something, you can usually also engineer it. All of life, for 4 billion years, dinosaurs, amoebas, tomatoes, humans, all of life was subject to the laws of natural selection and to the laws of organic biochemistry. But this is now about to change. Science is replacing evolution by natural selection with evolution by intelligent design. Not the intelligent design of some god above the clouds, but our intelligent design and the intelligent design of our clouds, the IBM cloud, the Microsoft cloud. These are the new driving forces of evolution. And at the same time, science may enable life. After being confined for 4 billion years to the limited realm of organic compounds, science may enable life to break out into the inorganic realm.
The goals here are ambitious but arrogant. While data is indeed robust and the tools created to use it are fascinating and potentially world-changing, human beings have abilities that data doesn't. While mathematical models can calculate probabilities, sometimes with a high degree of accuracy, humanity will always have the capacity to surprise, given our formidable creativity. Humans have proven remarkably resilient and surprisingly able to heal and recover from the most challenging circumstances. Unfortunately, some are lost due to the trials and tribulations of our current world, but that isn't the case for everyone, and as humanity evolves, it may well have a very different future than many of these elites believe we can master. While our digital world may have opened Pandora's box, there is still hope. And to that end, in 2019, I produced this video, which was the beginning of my website and book. I share it with you here to inspire you with better hope for the future.
Satoshi's page. They call me Cassandra. Some say that's my name, because those that surround me can't handle the blame. The economy is flailing, you'd think they'd be scared, but when all's said and done, the problem's not theirs. Teachers in schools wash the children's clothes, breakfast they give, pizza and toast. Round and round the impoverished go, to the minds of the rich the realisation is slow. In the comfort of homes, I'm all right, Jack, whilst depression is looming and laughs, I'll be right back. The comfort of those who can't see past their nose, oh heaven help them, but that's how it goes. Time it is ticking, it now won't be long. Wile E. Coyote can't tell the cliff has gone. Don't say you weren't warned before all this is done. You thought they were crazy, but the Bitcoin has won. When it is all over and the truth it is told, the story of crisis, it never gets old. The elites in their castles, their fortunes to fold, economists and politicians left out in the cold. A new world is rising, paper is no more. Money has died, and so has the law. Decay and corruption that went to its core. The blockchain has spoken, no truth like it before. The rules of the software, release or a new game. What will we choose at the dawn of a new age? A potential to trap, trumped by Satoshi's page. A triumph as the devil nurses his rage. So history goes, and what will it bring? A fairer society, or form of new king? A new set of rules around us to ring, but with many more choices, a new song it will sing. Our future is fluid, no need to be scared, but rules then and now will needs be compared. A time for philosophy and careful thought. We still have volition, our future's not bought. Softly, softly, tread carefully, now wait. There's no going back once you open the gate. By all means look back, but in truth it's too late. The dollar fiat Ponzi scheme has sealed all of our fates. Step into the future as boldly as you can. The wisdom of the past needs to inform your plan. The old energies are changing, the negativity is done. Kindness and compassion and creativity have won. It may still seem dark, the new light only a spark, but trust me, it's coming, this ride in the park. We are here to create it, the world we were promised. Every soul on the earth now has the opportunity to comment. The domain of the world no longer ruled by the few. The power we have, if only you knew. Released from their shackles, humans are free to create everything as it was always meant to be. But careful here, for surely you know the evil within you has potential to show. So be mindful and careful, but also carefree. The truth you have known and so it shall be, for love is the energy leading us on to the true potential we were always meant to become.
If you want to learn more about my ideas on how the world is evolving, my book is available on Amazon. The title is Truth Decay: How Bitcoin Fixes This. Here is a QR code for quick access to the book on Amazon. There is also a link to the book on my website and the possibility of paying for the book using Bitcoin. I also have a newsletter for updates, new videos and links to my social media profiles. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, and I thank you for your attention.